React to chaos, the Stoic way. The world is not slowing down. It is getting faster, louder, more unpredictable, more demanding, more chaotic than at any point in living memory. The news cycle does not pause. The economy does not stabilize. The people around you do not always behave the way you need them to. Plans fall apart. Relationships fracture. The ground beneath you shifts without warning. And in the middle of all of that, you are expected to function, to lead, to decide, to show up, to keep going. Most people are failing at this. Not because they are weak. Because they were never taught how to do it. They were never taught how to stand in the middle of chaos and remain themselves. How to face the unpredictable without being destroyed by it. How to respond with clarity and intention when everything around them is pulling for panic and reaction. But there is a way. It is not new. It is not a modern productivity hack or a wellness trend. It is a philosophy that was developed, tested, and refined over centuries by people who faced chaos at a scale most of us will never experience: wars, plagues, political collapse, exile, slavery, death, and who emerged from all of it not broken, but clarified. It is Stoicism. And today I am going to teach you how to use it to meet the chaos of your life with the one thing chaos cannot survive: a trained, disciplined, intentional mind. If this is the kind of content that actually changes how you move through the world, subscribe to this channel right now. This is what we build here. Every video. Every week. Let's go. Part 1: Understanding Chaos. Before we can talk about how to respond to chaos, we need to understand what chaos actually is. Because most people are afraid of chaos for the wrong reason. They are not afraid of chaos itself. They are afraid of what chaos exposes. When life is orderly and predictable, you can maintain the illusion of control. The routine holds. The plan works. The people behave the way you expect. And in that predictability, you can move through your days without ever having to confront the most fundamental truth of human existence. You are not in control of most of what happens to you. Chaos shatters that illusion. It arrives and removes the scaffolding you have built around the fact of your own vulnerability. And standing there, exposed, without the comfort of routine and predictability, that is what terrifies people. Not the chaos itself. The exposure. The Stoics did not try to rebuild the scaffolding. They tore it down themselves, deliberately through practice, so that chaos could never use it against them. Epictetus taught his students to begin each day with a radical acknowledgement: today, things will not go as planned. People will disappoint you. Circumstances will shift. Something will arrive that you did not anticipate and did not choose. This is not a failure of the universe. This is the universe operating exactly as it always has. The Stoic question was never, how do I prevent chaos? It was always, how do I meet it? That shift, from prevention to preparation, is the beginning of everything. Because you cannot prevent the storm. You have never been able to prevent the storm. But you can, absolutely can, become someone who knows how to navigate it. And that person, once built, is genuinely free in a way that no amount of external order can provide. Part 2: Why most people react badly. Let me describe what happens in most human beings when chaos arrives. The brain perceives a threat. Immediately and automatically, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires. Stress hormones flood the body. Heart rate accelerates. Breathing becomes shallow. Vision narrows. Thinking becomes reactive rather than reflective. This is the fight or flight response. It is ancient. It is biological. And in the world it was designed for, where threats were physical, immediate, and short-lived, it was extraordinarily useful. The problem is that the modern world has a completely different kind of chaos. It is not a predator in the forest. It is a financial crisis that lasts years. A relationship that falls apart over months. A career uncertainty that stretches on indefinitely. A political environment that generates daily alarm. These are not threats that the fight or flight response can resolve. You cannot fight the economy. You cannot flee the uncertainty. But the brain keeps sounding the alarm anyway, and so people live in a state of chronic stress, chronic reactivity, making decisions from a neurological state designed for emergencies, applied to conditions that require patience, wisdom, and long-term thinking. The result is predictable. People say things they regret, make decisions they later can't explain, snap at the people they love, abandon commitments they made in calmer moments, react from fear when they intended to act from principle. This is not a character flaw. It is a training deficit. The Stoics were, in the most practical sense, training themselves to interrupt this cycle, to insert something between the alarm and the response, to create, through daily practice, a space in which the thinking, reasoning, values-driven mind could operate even when the emotional alarm was ringing. Marcus Aurelius called this the discipline of assent, the practice of not automatically agreeing with the first impression that arrived, of pausing, examining, choosing a response that aligned with his values rather than simply expressing his automatic reaction. He practiced this every single day, not because he found it natural, because he recognized that without practice, he would be governed by his reactions rather than his choices. And a man governed by his reactions is not free, he is simply a mechanism, responding to stimuli. You deserve better than that. And you are capable of better than that. But it requires training. Part 3, the space between. There is a concept that sits at the absolute heart of Stoic practice. It is the space between stimulus and response. Between what happens to you and what you do about it, there is a gap. A moment. A breath. And in that gap lives the entirety of your freedom as a human being. In the animal, that gap is essentially zero. Stimulus arrives, response follows, automatically, instantly, without deliberation. In the human being, that gap can be widened. Through awareness. Through practice. Through the deliberate, daily cultivation of the habit of pausing before acting. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps and went on to become one of the most important psychologists of the 20th century, described this gap as the source of all human dignity. He wrote that everything can be taken from a person except the last of human freedoms, the freedom to choose one's response to any given set of circumstances. He did not write this from comfort. He wrote it from inside one of the most extreme examples of chaos and suffering in human history. And what he discovered there confirmed what the Stoics had understood centuries before. The gap is real. The gap is available. And the gap, cultivated through practice, becomes the foundation of a life that cannot be destroyed by external events. So how do you widen the gap? You begin with the breath. This is not spiritual instruction. This is neuroscience. Slow, deliberate breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the counterpart to fight or flight. It literally signals to your brain that the immediate threat has passed and that the thinking mind can re-engage. One breath. Taken consciously, deliberately, in the moment between what happens and what you do about it. That is the beginning of the practice. From that breath, a question. A single question, asked quickly and quietly to yourself. Is my next action a reflection of my values, or a reaction to my emotions? You do not always have to choose the values. You are human. Sometimes the emotion wins. But the asking of the question, even when the emotion wins, trains the habit. Makes the gap a little wider. Makes the next moment of choice a little more accessible. Over time, over weeks and months and years of practice, the gap becomes a room. A space so wide that even in the middle of genuine chaos, you can stand in it and think. And from that thinking, choose. And from that choice, act. That is the Stoic warrior. Not someone who feels nothing. Someone who chooses everything. Part 4, What Chaos Reveals About You. Here is something uncomfortable. And I am going to ask you to stay with it rather than deflect from it. Chaos does not create your character. It reveals it. The person you are in ordinary, comfortable, predictable life, that person is partly a performance. Not dishonestly. Just naturally. When things are easy, it is easy to be patient, generous, disciplined, and principled. The conditions support those qualities. But when chaos arrives, when you are under pressure, when the stakes are high, when you are tired and afraid and things are not going the way you need them to go, what comes out is what is actually inside. This is not a judgment. It is an invitation. Because if what comes out is reactivity, panic, bitterness, blame, or collapse, that is information. It is telling you exactly where the work needs to happen. It is pointing to the specific places where the Stoic practice is needed most. Marcus Aurelius wrote, to himself, privately, without performance, about the moments when he reacted poorly, when he spoke harshly, when his patience ran out, when his intentions and his actions did not match. He did not use those moments as evidence that he was a failure. He used them as diagnostic tools. I reacted there. Why? What belief was underneath that reaction? What would a wiser response have looked like? What practice do I need to develop so that I am better in that moment next time? That is the Stoic relationship with failure. Not shame. Not self-punishment. Honest inquiry followed by deliberate practice. Think about the last time chaos arrived in your life, and you did not handle it the way you wish you had. The last time you reacted in a way that you later regretted. Do not cringe away from it. Look at it. What was underneath that reaction? What were you afraid of? What need was going unmet? What belief about yourself or the world was threatened? That answer, whatever it is your curriculum. That is the specific thing you are developing. That is the place where your Stoic practice lives. The chaos showed it to you. And that, despite how painful it was, is a gift. Part 5. The Stoic Tools for Real-Time Chaos. Philosophy without practice is entertainment. So let me give you the actual tools, the ones you can use in the middle of the storm, not just in calm reflection afterward. The first tool is the view from above. When chaos contracts your perspective, when everything feels urgent and overwhelming and too close, the Stoic practice of the view from above asks you to deliberately expand it. Mentally step back. First from the immediate moment. Then from the day. Then from the week. Then from the year. Then from the decade. From that elevated view, from the perspective of time rather than the urgency of now, ask, how significant is this, really? In the context of my whole life, my whole story, what is the actual weight of this moment? Most of the things that feel catastrophic in the immediate moment are, from the perspective of a year or a decade, much smaller. Not unimportant, but proportionate. And proportion is exactly what chaos destroys and the view from above restores. The second tool is the dichotomy of control. In the middle of chaos, your mind will be generating a list of everything that is wrong and everything you need to fix. That list will be long, and it will be overwhelming, and much of it will consist of things you cannot actually change. Stop. Take out 2 columns in your mind. Label them, in my control. Not in my control. Move every item into its column. Then, and this is the critical step, withdraw your energy entirely from the second column and direct it entirely to the first. Not because the things in the second column don't matter. They may matter enormously. But your energy applied to them produces nothing except exhaustion and suffering. Your energy applied to what is actually within your power can produce real change. This is not resignation. It is precision. It is the disciplined redirection of a finite resource, your attention and energy, to where it can actually do something. The third tool is the premeditation of adversity. This one is practiced before chaos arrives, not during it. Each morning, or each evening, take a few minutes to consider what difficulties the coming day or week might bring. Not with anxiety. With preparation. If this meeting goes badly, what will I do? If this relationship creates friction, how will I respond? If this plan falls apart, what is my next move? This is not pessimism. The Stoics were not pessimists. This is what modern military strategists call red teaming, deliberately anticipating failure so that you are not ambushed by it. When you have already considered the difficult scenario in advance, it arrives without the shock that normally derails you. You have already made a decision. You already know who you intend to be in that moment. The chaos cannot catch you off guard because you already thought it through. The fourth tool is the Stoic anchor. In your most grounded, calm, clear moments, identify one sentence. One short, true statement about who you are and what you stand for. Something that is undeniably, foundationally yours. It might be, I am someone who does not quit. Or I respond with clarity, not fear. Or I choose my response. It is not chosen for me. Write it down. Memorize it. And when chaos arrives and the alarm is ringing and everything is demanding your reaction, return to that anchor. Repeat it internally. Let it be the thing you stand on while everything else is moving. That sentence is not magic. It is a behavioral cue. It is your mind's shortcut back to the identity you have built in the calm, made available in the storm. Part 6: Chaos in Relationships. Some of the most persistent and damaging chaos in human life does not come from external events. It comes from other people. The colleague who undermines you. The family member whose behavior is unpredictable. The partner whose words cut. The friend who betrays. The stranger whose aggression arrives without warning. Human chaos, relational chaos, is in many ways harder to navigate than circumstantial chaos. Because we are wired for connection. Because the people in our lives carry more power to affect us than almost anything else. Because the pain of interpersonal chaos is not just practical, it is deeply, personally felt. The Stoics had a great deal to say about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, and this is one of the most practically useful things he ever recorded, that each morning he would remind himself, "Today I will meet people who are difficult, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, and unkind. But I will not be surprised by this. I will not be destabilized by it. Because I understand that these people are acting from ignorance, not malice. And my response to them is within my control." That morning practice did not make the difficult people easier. It made him more prepared to meet them without losing himself. The Stoic approach to relational chaos is built on two foundations. The first is the understanding that you cannot control another person's behavior. Not even slightly. What they say, how they act, the choices they make, these are entirely within their own sphere of control and entirely outside yours. What you can control is your response. Your boundaries. Your choices about where you invest your energy and with whom. The second foundation is the practice of what the Stoics call dokiosis, a natural connection and concern for others, rooted in the recognition that every human being, however difficult, is struggling with something. Not as an excuse for poor behavior, but as a context that makes compassion possible alongside firmness. You can hold both. You can refuse to accept treatment that violates your values, clearly, firmly, without hostility, while still treating the person in front of you with basic human dignity. That is not weakness. That is one of the hardest and most sophisticated things a person can practice. And it produces something that no other approach to difficult relationships can produce: the ability to walk away from a hard conversation without having lost yourself in it. Part 7: The Long Game. Chaos is not a single event. It is a feature of life. It will come again. In different forms. At different scales. With different faces. But it will come. And so the Stoic practice is not designed for one crisis. It is designed for a lifetime of living in a world that is fundamentally, irreducibly, permanently uncertain. This is both sobering and liberating. Sobering because it means there is no arrival point. No moment where you will have handled enough chaos to be done with it. The practice is ongoing. The work never fully finishes. Liberating because it means every moment is an opportunity. Every small chaos, every frustrating day, every derailed plan, every person who tests your patience, is practice. Real, live, meaningful practice for the bigger moments that will inevitably come. The Stoics did not wait for the significant challenges to practice their philosophy. They practiced it in the grocery store. In the traffic. In the minor annoyances and small frustrations of daily life. Because they understood that how you handle the small chaos is building, or not building, the capacity for the large chaos. You do not rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your practice. If your practice is reactive in the small moments, snapping, catastrophizing, losing perspective over minor inconveniences, That will be your first instinct when something genuinely serious arrives. And instincts are not changed in a crisis. They are changed in the thousands of ordinary moments that precede the crisis. Begin the practice now. In today's small moments. In the frustration of this morning. In the difficulty of this week. Not because today's difficulty is significant. Because today's practice is building tomorrow's capacity. And tomorrow's capacity, built carefully, daily, over years, is what will allow you to stand in the middle of genuine chaos and remain, recognizably, undeniably, powerfully yourself. Part 8. The chaos that changes you. There is a level of chaos that changes everything. Not the frustration of a bad day. The kind of chaos that rewrites your story. The kind that arrives without warning and divides your life into before and after. Loss. Failure. Betrayal. Collapse. The kind of hard that you never fully get over, only through. I want to speak about that directly. Because the Stoic framework is sometimes dismissed as cold. As detached. As a philosophy that asks you to be unmoved by the deepest human experiences. That is a misreading. The Stoics did not ask for detachment from life. They asked for engagement with life without enslavement to its outcomes. There is a vast difference between those two things. Seneca, writing after enormous personal loss, did not tell people not to grieve. He grieved. He wrote about grief with a tenderness and depth that reads as completely modern, completely human. But he made a distinction that I want to offer you now. He distinguished between grief that honors what was lost, which is natural, necessary, and human, and grief that consumes everything going forward, that becomes the organizing principle of a life, that transforms loss into permanent identity. The first is love expressing itself through pain. The second is pain that has replaced love as the center of who you are. The Stoic practice, in the face of the deepest chaos, does not ask you not to feel. It asks you, in time, to return to living. To carry the loss without being defined by it. To let what happened change you, deepen you, soften you, clarify what matters, without letting it stop you. Marcus Aurelius lost child after child. He outlived people he loved deeply. He governed an empire through plague and war and watched the world he was responsible for suffer in ways he could not prevent. And he kept showing up. He kept writing. He kept practicing. He kept choosing, every morning, in the private pages of a journal no one was supposed to read, to be the person his values required him to be, even when the world was giving him every reason not to. That is not the absence of feeling. That is the triumph of character over circumstance. That is available to you. In whatever you are facing. However deep the chaos goes. What you do next. You have just spent significant time with ideas that have outlasted every civilization that has tried to contain them. Stoicism has survived because it is not theory. It is technology. A practical, tested, refined set of tools for navigating the actual conditions of human life, which have always included, and will always include, chaos. You now have those tools. The view from above. The dichotomy of control. The premeditation of adversity. The pause. The anchor. The morning intention. The evening accounting. The practice of meeting small chaos as training for large chaos. The understanding that your response, always, only, entirely, is yours. What you do with those tools is your choice. And I want to say this plainly. Most people who watch a video like this will feel the fire for a day or two. They will mean to begin the practice. They will intend to use what they learned. And then the ordinary pull of ordinary life will cover it over and nothing will change. I am asking you not to be that person. Not for my sake. For yours. Because the chaos is coming. It is always coming. And the only question is whether you will meet it as you are now, or as the person you could become if you began the practice today. Begin today. One practice. One breath before one reaction. One morning intention. One honest evening reflection. That is all. That is everything. And as you build this, as you grow into the person who can stand in the middle of chaos and choose their response, I want you to build it here, with this community. Subscribe to this channel right now. Every week we go this deep. Every week we take the ancient wisdom of the Stoics and bring it into the actual lived experience of your actual life. Every week we build people who cannot be broken by ordinary chaos, and who, when extraordinary chaos arrives, know exactly who they are and how to meet it. This is your channel. Subscribe. Stay. Grow. Because the world needs people who can stand in the storm. And you are becoming one of them. I will see you in the next video.